Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. I am recording this on Mother's Day, so I hope that if you are with your mother today, or grandmother, or aunt, or sister, if your sister's mother, you are being very appreciative and kind to them. I had a very nice Mother's Day, a nice quarantine Mother's Day. All right, this is my second attempt at this video because the first time I started rambling. So hopefully I can hold it together and make it through. We'll see. We're going to be talking about the Emancipation Proclamation and Lincoln during this lesson, and you'll be reading about the Emancipation Proclamation as well. So as you know, Lincoln was elected in November of 1860. And then in 1861, in April, after he was inaugurated, the shots were fired at Fort Sumter, and Southern states began to secede from the Union. They formed the Confederation of the United States. I believe I said that right. I always say it wrong for some reason. They started their own constitution. They elected a president. They were saying we want to be our own country. And the North went to war with the South to try to preserve the Union. So the South wanted to keep slavery. The North wanted to end slavery for the most part. But more importantly, they wanted to preserve the Union. They did not want the United States to be split into two countries. That was of utmost importance to Abraham Lincoln and the military leaders. And that's important in what we're going to talk about today. So contrary to what you may think, I'm not really sure how much background knowledge you guys have about this, but Lincoln did not end slavery at the start of the war. He did not say after the shots were fired on Sumter, and he did not say after Sumter, not Sumter, Sumter. See, still saying it wrong. He did not say immediately upon the Confederation of the United States being formed. Still doesn't sound right to me. The United States of the Confederation. Also, another thing, keep getting wrong. The Confederacy. He didn't say, okay, now I end slavery. That didn't happen right away. So it was not until, and in fact, in 1862, he wrote a letter to Horace Greeley. And in that letter, he said he would keep slavery or he would end slavery. He would do whatever it took to preserve the Union. So that's just something I think is a little bit of a misconception about the Civil War, where people think that Lincoln, declared slavery to be illegal, and then that's what started the war. That's not actually what started the war. And so that's kind of important to understand for today. So in 1862, and this was July 1862, so over a year after the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, Lincoln wrote a preliminary proclamation of emancipation for the slaves and showed it to his crew, and then eventually actually released the Emancipation Proclamation to become like the law of the land starting on January 1st, 1863. So almost a solid 2 years after the war started. So it's just an important thing to understand. Another thing I just want to touch on here, and I think this can be a little, it's something we tend to do in history where we kind of look at people through a certain kind of hero lens, and that doesn't let us see them in a nuanced way. And I think it's important to point this out because you may, at some point in your life, see like a headline that's like, was Lincoln really a racist? Or Lincoln, didn't really want to end slavery. Like there's like articles like that will come out, and there's ideas about that. And of course, as with all things, it's not as simple as that. But it is important to know that Lincoln did feel that slavery was morally wrong. He did not believe morally in slavery, but he was not free of racial prejudice. So, and that is very well documented in a variety of things. And when he was running for president, he made a statement saying, let me just be clear that I don't want to eliminate slavery in order to make blacks and whites equal. He stated that quite clearly. He was a fan of the idea of actually resettling the slaves into a different country. And he invited a group of former freed slaves to the White House and presented this idea to them, saying, I will I will end slavery, and then why don't you all just leave this country and go, basically kind of go back to where you came from. At this point, the slave trade started however long before the country was even formed, and now we're talking in like the 1860s. Most of the people he would have been referring to would have been born in this country, would have had their parents born in this country, would have had their grandparents born in this country, would have maybe even had their great grandparents born in this country. So he was essentially asking people who are born and bred and raised on American soil, as much Americans as anyone else, to leave. So that I think that complicates the issue. And I can't remember if I said this, but I'm going to say it again. I feel like I said it, but maybe not totally clearly. He didn't. His first goal was not to end slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation was a strategic military move, and he instituted the Emancipation Proclamation in order to end the war, and it brought in the support of many former slaves or slaves that escaped slaves who joined, and that's actually what helped win the war, which we'll talk a little bit more about next week, the actual how the war went itself. So it was a military move, and it was not necessarily a move out of a great love of freedom and equality, which many abolitionists, who are people who are very anti-slavery, they were very drawn to the horrors of slavery. They felt that was not, and which Lincoln did feel that way as well, but his reasoning was different. And I just think it's important to know that, because a lot of times we hear these terms, Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation, and we just think to ourselves, oh, well, Abraham Lincoln freed all the slaves and then the war started. And that's not actually how it happened. It was actually a very different timeline than that. I'm going to include a link. I'm not going to require you to read it, but I do think it's an interesting read. And it's pretty short if you're interested in this topic. It's from history.com, and it's 5 things you may not know about Abraham Lincoln's slavery and emancipation. The 16th president was firm in believing slavery was morally wrong, but his views on racial equality, were sometimes more complicated. So he wasn't an abolitionist, as I've said. He didn't believe blacks should have the same rights as whites. He thought colonization could resolve the issue of slavery. That's taking, freed slaves or former slaves and moving them out of the United States. He did this as a military policy, and it didn't actually free all of the slaves, which you're actually going to read about for today. So in the assigned reading for today. So that's the other thing you'll read about. I like how it says here at the end of this, despite its limitations, Lincoln's proclamation marked a crucial turning point in the evolution of Lincoln's views on slavery, as well as a turning point in the Civil War itself. By war's end, some 200,000 Black men would serve in the Union Army and Navy, striking a mortal blow against the institution of slavery and paving the way for its eventual abolition by the 13th Amendment and helping win the war. So that is kind of a more complete understanding, I would say, of the Emancipation Proclamation and kind of the war itself than what you may have gotten on like a more surface level from various sources thus far in your life. Okay, so what you're going to do for today, you're going to go to, good old CPS Virtual Library, and you're going to type in Emancipation Proclamation. I'm going to put this in the description of the assignment for today as well. There's a couple books that come up, but the one you're going to look at is this one by Ryan Nagelhout. And then you'll access it in the same way. And I'm going to explain to you what pages I want you to read for today. So you'll read some pages in this book. Way back when, I'm going to unshare myself. Okay, so way back when the lady talked me through how to use the CPS Virtual Library, there was a way to find out how many titles. I can't remember what the way was. So I'm a teensy bit worried that you won't be able to read this book at the same time that another classmate is, or that at the same time that like 5 classmates are. There are 2 copies of it in there. So if you saw, there was like 2 copies of the Ryan Nagelhout Emancipation Proclamation book. So if you cannot read it right away, just, watch the video, read the questions, and then just 20 minutes, walk away from your computer. See, none of us are checking it out, and we're all logging in as guests. So I really think we'll be fine. Try a couple times. I know that's really annoying. This is only if it doesn't work. Just to see if one of the times you can get into it. Hopefully it won't be an issue because we won't all be doing your assignment at the exact same time. And that some people procrastinate and some people will want to get it done right away and it will work out. But if over a period of time where you're trying it at various different times, you try it Monday and you try it Tuesday and it's still not working, then let me know and I will be annoyed at technology and that that this problem exists, but I will figure out another way to get you those pages. I think if I just screenshot each page and upload them, you'll be able to access them. We'll see. Hopefully it's not an issue, but if it becomes an issue for you, just let me know and I'll deal with that. So main points of what I've said so far are: the Emancipation Proclamation was not issued at the start of the Civil War. It was in fact issued as a military move on the part of Abraham Lincoln. He was anti-slavery. He believed that slavery was morally wrong, but he was not necessarily what you would call somebody who was pro equality. He had some let's just call it what it is and say some racist ideas and some racist beliefs. So that's kind of the overall viewpoint of that. And you're going to read through some of these things more specifically about the proclamation and answer some questions on those. Thank you. I will see you soon.